You want to know how far an HOA will go just to break a good man's spirit? Well, let me tell you, mine tried to force me to tear down the fence I'd built with my own two hands. That fence wasn't just wood and nails. It marked my hard work, my family's privacy, and my dignity. And when they threatened it, they had no idea they were about to start a fight they couldn't win. Before I get into it, if you enjoy stories where ordinary folks like us stand up to unfair HOAs, don't forget to subscribe. It's the best way to hear more true tales of justice and community standing strong. I moved into this neighborhood 15 years ago. Back then, it was quiet. Families waved to each other, kids rode bikes safely, and we all looked out for one another. Over time, a new board took over the HOA, led by a woman everyone quietly called Karen with a clipboard. Her real name was Margaret, but the way she prowled around snapping pictures of people's houses, you'd think she was a deputy sheriff. My trouble started when I decided to replace the old, falling-apart fence in my backyard. I'd saved up, bought quality cedar wood, and spent 3 weekends digging, hammering, and leveling it perfectly. When it was finished, my wife smiled and said, "It finally feels like home again." That alone made the blisters worth it. But 2 days later, a bright orange notice was slapped on my door. Violation of community aesthetics. Fence must be removed within 14 days. I stared at it in disbelief. I hadn't broken any rules. The HOA handbook clearly allowed 6-foot fences, as long as they were wood and stained naturally. Mine was exactly that. I marched to the next HOA meeting with the notice in hand. The board sat there behind their folding table, 3 smug faces waiting to hear me plead. "I followed every guideline," I said, holding up the handbook. "This fence is within regulation. Why am I being targeted?" Karen folded her arms. "Your fence looks taller than 6 feet. It disrupts the uniformity of the neighborhood." "It's 6 feet on the I replied, keeping my cool. "I measured twice before I cut a single board." One of the other board members shrugged. "If it looks taller, it has to come down." That was their entire argument. No tape measure, no proof, just looks taller. I left that meeting fuming. My wife tried to calm me down. "Maybe they'll back off if you ignore it," she suggested. But I knew Karen. She thrived on control, and she wasn't about to back down. Sure enough, 2 days later I got another notice. This one came with a fine, $250 for noncompliance. If I didn't remove the fence by the deadline, the fine would double every week. That's when things escalated. Neighbors started whispering to me in support. "We like your fence," one said quietly when Karen wasn't around. Another neighbor sighed. She fined me for leaving my trash bins out for 20 minutes. It wasn't just me. Karen was on a power trip, and I had become her newest target. The final straw came when I caught her on my property, measuring my fence herself. I stepped outside and said, "Hey, you're trespassing." She smirked. "HOA business. I can inspect community violations whenever necessary." "You don't have that authority," I snapped. "Get off my land." She scribbled something in her notebook before walking away without another word. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the growing stack of fines. My hands clenched into fists. They want my fence gone? They want to bleed me dry with bogus fines? No. I wasn't going to let them win. And that's when I got my idea. If they thought my fence ruined the neighborhood's look, wait until they saw what it looked like without their precious iron gate at the community entrance. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to show the entire neighborhood exactly how fragile the HOA's power really was. The idea brewed in my head for days. Every time I passed that giant iron gate at the neighborhood entrance, the one Karen bragged about in meetings, "Our gate is a symbol of prestige," I couldn't help but smirk. She loved that gate more than she cared about any of us. And that gave me leverage. Now, I wasn't reckless. I wasn't about to sneak out in the dead of night with a hacksaw. No, I wanted this to be legal and loud. The kind of move that would expose their hypocrisy in front of the whole community. So I started digging. Not with a shovel, though, later on, that came in handy, but with paperwork. I went down to the county records office. A few polite questions later, I discovered something shocking. The HOA had never properly filed the paperwork for their gate easement. Technically, the land under that big expensive gate wasn't theirs at all. It belonged to the city. And here's the kicker, the city had been considering removing the gate for months because it blocked emergency vehicles. All they needed was a formal complaint to trigger an inspection. Guess who filed it? The inspector showed up one Tuesday morning. I watched from my porch as a clipboard man measured the width of the entrance, shook his head, and snapped a few pictures. By Friday, a bright orange notice was taped to the HOA's gate. Obstruction of public access. Gate must be removed within 30 days. The neighborhood was buzzing by sunset. People were stopping by my yard just to laugh. "Did you see the notice?" a neighbor chuckled. "About time someone held them accountable," another added. Karen stormed down my driveway that evening, waving the notice in her fist. "You did this," she hissed. I leaned against my fence, my perfectly legal fence, and smiled. "Funny. Looks like the city did it." Her face turned red. "We'll fight this. You won't win." I raised an eyebrow. "Karen, you've already lost." For once, she didn't have a comeback. She just stomped off, muttering under her breath. The next HOA meeting was a circus. Residents were furious, not with me, but with the board. "You've been fining us for trash bins and garden gnomes, while you couldn't even file your own paperwork," one neighbor shouted. "My dues paid for that gate." "Thousands of dollars, wasted," another yelled. Karen tried to regain control, pounding her gavel. "This is out of order. Sit down." But no one listened. I stood up slowly. "You wanted me to tear down my fence. You fined me, harassed me, trespassed on my property. All while hiding your own violations. The city gave you 30 days to take down that gate. If you don't comply, they'll do it themselves. And you'll be fined." Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The room erupted with laughter and applause. Karen's face twisted in humiliation. Over the next few weeks, I watched crews dismantle that iron monstrosity piece by piece. The proud symbol of prestige that Karen had used to lord over us was hauled away in the back of a truck. And my fence? Still standing. Strong as ever. The best part was the shift in the neighborhood. Without the gate, people felt freer. The board lost its grip, and at the next election, Karen and her allies were voted out. One of my neighbors came up to me afterward and said, "You didn't just save your fence. You saved all of us from her nonsense." I won't lie, hearing that felt better than anything else. Because it wasn't about revenge alone. It was about showing bullies that they can't hide behind clipboards and fake rules forever. Karen moved away a few months later. Rumor was, she couldn't stand living in a place where people still laughed every time someone mentioned the missing gate. As for me, I sit in my backyard, leaning against my fence, and smile. Not because I destroyed their gate, but because I reminded everyone that dignity and fairness still matter. So here's the moral: when someone abuses their power, they're already building the walls of their own downfall. All it takes is one good push, and sometimes, that push is just telling the truth.